Hi, everyone. Tanya Hertz here. We're going to be talking this evening a little bit about sales, profitability, pricing decisions. We're going to discuss implementing sales strategies, creating websites, using intermediary platforms, cash apps, other payment tools. We will explore different customer acquisition strategies, including different e-commerce options, look at how to use Google My Business and Google Maps, how to place your business on both to make the most of Google and make sure that people can find you. And then we're just going to touch on the basics of hiring employees versus independent contractors and what you need to know about both. So what do we mean by sales and profitability? So we've gone over this in previous chapters, but just to touch on it again briefly, sales are all of the income, the revenue that we bring in. Profitability is the profit relative to the expenses. So it's the cost of the operations that a company incurs when it generates revenues. And what's left over is profit. So profit equals revenue minus expenses. And we've done these calculations in previous chapters. We've talked about the difference between cost of goods sold and expenses. So cost of goods sold contains only the costs that are incurred when we are manufacturing or making our product. It contains the cost incurred after all of the other, for all of the other costs of running the business. So cost of goods sold only includes the manufacturing cost. Expenses include also the other costs of running business, paying a salary, paying for operational expenses. And we've gone through some of the expense sheets in the chapters before, in the budget assignment, in the second section, and make sure though that you're including all of your expenses, including your delivery expenses, including all of the expenses that go into supplies, including all the expenses that go into the utilities, operating the utilities, especially if you're operating out of a home-based business, including the entire portion of that structure that you're using for business. And then of course, any insurance and the difference, and you may need to know in different calculations, the difference between variable and fixed expenses. Again, variable expenses can change month to month, or depending on how many of a particular product you produce or make. Fixed expenses don't change. It doesn't matter how many goods you make, you're still going to need to pay the same in rent. You're still going to need to pay the same in insurance. And we talked a little bit about this before, but I just wanted to go a little deeper into pricing. And I want to make sure that you understand that pricing is not, you should not just look at pricing in terms of the cost of how much it costs you to make a particular item, but that's important. So a good way to look at pricing is to look at it from a multi-pronged approach. Look at it from the cost-based approach. So cost-based pricing is when you sell the sales price of the product is determined by adding a percentage of profitability or expenses that you want to make on top of the cost of actually producing, or the cost of goods sold. So the expenses should be no more than about 30% if you expect to remain profitable. You also need to look at, though, the competition. What are the competitors charging? And price points are, in competitive-based pricing, are heavily determined by what your competitors are charging. You focus on the market. You focus on what other people are charging rather than what your costs are, or in conjunction with what your costs are. And then the third pricing approach is the customer value-based pricing. And that's when pricing is based on the consumer's value or perceived value of the product. So in this pricing model, we need to understand that price signifies or signals value or worth. And a customer will make assumptions about quality, will make assumptions about the ethics of your company, about the cleanliness of your company based on the price. So all of those things need to be considered when you're thinking about pricing. And so many things go into the determination of price. How much you're paying for overhead, how much you're paying for materials, your time, how much profit do you want to make or expect to make, how much is the competition charging, how does your price signal to your competitors whether or not you have an ethical, fair, decent company. Think about, if your price is too low, customers may think, well, there's no way they're using quality ingredients. Don't get trapped in price wars with competitors. Cheaper does not mean better in people's minds. make sure that you have a good product, a high quality product, and then price your product accordingly to stay competitive, to so that you can signal that you have a quality product. And then also keep in mind what too high of a price might signal to your competitors. It might show them that they might feel that you no longer care about them, or that you are, maybe greedy or something like this. So all of these things make a difference, and all of these things need to be considered. And remember, when we talked about the economics of one unit means that you need to know how much each one item you sell costs, the costs of one recipe. Every recipe that you make, you need to know roughly what that costs you to make. And of course, it's going to go up and down with the variable prices as costs go up and other things, but you need to know your break-even point for each recipe that you sell. You also need to know your break-even point per day. How much does it cost you to stay in business in a day? How much does it cost for you to make money at an event that you're hosting? How much per week do you need to make to stay in business? How much per month do you need to make? And what's your overall break even for the business itself, for all the money that you put into it to start the company? When do you hit that? What day can you say, I am now profitable? We hit our break even today. So these are all break evens that you need to understand and calculate. And again, rough estimates. We don't need specific numbers on everything, because things fluctuate and change, but you need to have those clear, you need a clear picture of what your different break evens are. And there's more formulas that you can use here. And we're going to stop actually right here before we start talking about the card readers and some of the other parts of this section. So talk to you soon.